Well, joining us live from Barcelona is Remi Piet, a senior partner at the MBL Advisory and a specialist in geopolitics, energy security and international affairs, where he joins us to discuss the latest developments in the US-Iran diplomacy and the implications for the Gulf and global energy markets. Mr. Remi, thank you and welcome to Asia One News. So yes, first question. President Trump says that the United States and Iran are set to resume talks after he called off threatened military strikes. How significant is this diplomatic breakthrough and what could this mean for security across the Gulf?
Well, we went through the classic routine of the Trump administration, which is threats of Armageddon, a conflict that would be of colossal consequences, and then at the last second, calling for negotiations, hoping that this maneuver would actually have strong pressure and influence on the Iranian regime. Whether these round of negotiations, which now have been confirmed by different parts, will lead to a specific agreement, and whether that specific agreement will be followed and implemented is still to be seen. We've seen this similar negotiation obviously in Pakistan and a memorandum of understanding, and unfortunately did not lead to a path to a lasting peace. Whether that will be the capacity now to move forward, you definitely have the different parts to this negotiation that show their strength and their desire to move forward no matter what. And then they still need to find some common ground on key topics, especially the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has also mentioned the fact that the nuclear question will be under negotiation. I don't think is the case, at least on the Iranian side. So there's a lot of uncertainties on this opening of new negotiations that are to be welcomed by everyone.
And so the Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan and the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi have discussed reducing tensions and strengthening regional stability. How important is this Saudi-Iran engagement and how could it reinforce the broader US-Iran dialogue?
I mean, this is actually very important because no matter what, Iran and Saudi Arabia will remain the two very strong power and countries of importance in the region. And unless you have some clear negotiations and institutional collaboration between Saudi Arabia and Iran, you will not have a lasting peace in the region. We've seen already over the last few years a certain rapprochement between Riyadh and Tehran. There had been some discussions actually under Chinese patronage and not American patronage, which was quite a first in international affairs for recognition of the two countries and potential talks to be developed in the future. So you see that kind of a bridge between Saudi Arabia and Iran being remended a little bit. Obviously, Saudi has suffered from strikes and is central to that question with the Houthis insurgency in Yemen that threatens the Red Sea and some of their harbors. So you need to have Saudi Arabia as a key central actor of those negotiations together with other GCC countries in the Gulf, and that shows a potential alternative to the talks directly with the US. If there will be down the road capacities to talk between Riyadh and Tehran, potentially with other actors, as I said, Beijing who had favored talks in the past, and having those negotiations at that regional level, potentially more lasting and more pragmatic than the rhetorical, speeches that we have from Washington, D.C. and the Trump administration.
And the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian says that the MOU with the United States will become a key pillar on Iran's future foreign policy. Do you believe this signals a lasting shift in Tehran's regional approach?
It's still to be seen. I mean, the Iranian president is probably the least hawkish figure in Iranian politics, as opposed to some of the more conservative forces in Tehran, and he has been the one favoring more of a discussion towards Washington D.C., which explains a bit more his position that this agreement should be a central pillar of Iranian foreign policy and economics in the future. And actually, it will be. I mean, it's extremely important for Iran to be able to move forward away from the sanctions that he has seen on this energy sector, to move away from a series of tensions, and the U.S. is obviously a force that has to be included into this conversation and will have to be a pillar of Iranian foreign policy. Now, how much can we see inside this conversation and this speech in terms of turning it into an implementable roadmap down the road is still to be seen. As I said, more specifically because of the the position of opposition on the Iranian politics. There still needs to be some kind of consensus, and we start seeing some gaps here between the different actors in Tehran.
And finally, oil prices have fallen on expectations that renewed diplomacy could ease tensions and safeguard shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. How optimistic are you that these negotiations can deliver lasting stability for Gulf economies and the global energy market?
Well, obviously, you see a reduction of prices following those discussions. Again, we have, as the extent of the capacity for those negotiations to turn into something that would be concrete and long lasting. Now, obviously, the Strait of Hormuz is essential to energy geopolitics. 20% of global LNG and oil transit through the Strait of Hormuz. But since the beginning of the conflict, we started seeing some alternatives, especially on the way that Saudi Arabia could export its oil with the ports on the Red Sea, which is so important that the Yemeni conflict doesn't take much more importance. Same thing for the discussions around the Fujairah harbor to be able to export some of the Emiratis energy. The ones that are really suffering are the Qataris, the Kuwaitis, the Iraqis. But we've seen a series of better understanding from international markets onto being able to size the impact that this will have on the global energy supply. We have to remember that at the very beginning of the conflict, in potentially a trend towards overproduction compared to consumption, with some worries on international economic growth. At the same time, we had in the last couple of days a meeting of OPEC plus countries that agreed to increase their production targets. So all these actually are pressures that would lower international prices and therefore sustain economic growth. But to go back to your question, how much can we see on the impact of the opening of new discussions between the US and Iran on the long-lasting peace and global economy well-being? I mean, it's still very early to talk and to have some kind of assessment. We'll have to see. The MOU was a good step in the right direction, but was not implemented on different fronts. We can go back to this on who's at blame at this. I think both sides were, and so we will still need to see what are the content of current negotiations and how these will be implemented to have a real capacity to analyze the impact on global security and energy prices.
So thank you so much for your time.